All right, so in the previous video, we looked at how muscle twitches work, individual muscles. Now we're going to see how these muscle fibers work as groups we call motor units. So a motor unit there's a very strict definition. It is one motor neuron and all the muscle fibers it controls. So I'll have one motor neuron and it's going to have little branches that go out that are going to control various amounts of muscle fibers. And large muscles like the gluteus maximus, a motor unit will have thousands of muscle fibers. Smaller muscles and more finely tuned as far as how they work, like the ones around the eye, a motor unit will only have a dozen muscle fibers in it. So it changes. The one key that is always constant, it is one motor neuron. So each muscle, each whole muscle consists of many motor units. So this is how we can control the force with which we contract the muscle. So our bicep brachii, the muscle that's going to cause us to flex our arm, our elbow. If I'm just picking up a cup of coffee, I don't need to have a lot of power in my bicep brachii. But if I'm going to move a box of books, I'm going to pick it up, I'm going to need a lot of strength in my bicep brachii. So it's controlled, that strength is controlled by motor units. So as it says here, coarse movements are going to have with muscles are going to have large numbers of fibers in the motor units. Precise muscle, or muscles that are involved in precise movements, will have fewer. And so the way it works is, we'll pretend that it is a little pie chart here. And so let's say, a bicep brachii, I'm doing something and I'm going to be using it. I will use a certain number of motor units while I am exercising or doing whatever I'm doing, but they will tire out. And what I will do is I will recruit the next set, and I will cause these to relax. That's called recruitment. Once these tire out, I'm going to recruit the next group, and it keeps cycling. Now, if I took a book, if I took our textbook and held it out at shoulder height out to my side, and I held it there, at first it would be fine, but within a few seconds, really, you would start getting to where my deltoid, my shoulder muscle, would start tiring out. And when it did, you would see it start shaking. What's happening is, if I'm holding it out while it is smooth, the motor units are going to be recruited so that I can keep it straight. But once all of the motor units are now tired, I'm going to be passing through them really quickly, and that's going to cause the shaking of my arm. And you're going to see in a couple things that one of the times that you can tell what something does is when it no longer does it efficiently. Like, recruitment is something you should not see. The only time you see it is when you get past the point of having fresh motor units. All right, so recruitment, again, increases the number of motor units activated to produce more force. Certain motor units are active first, and then others are activated only when the intensity of the stimulus increases. As the intensity of the stimulus increases, the recruitment of motor units continues until all motor units are activated. And so again, what we're doing is we only use a certain percentage, like on this, we'll just say a quarter of my muscle, but because it's being used over and over again, that area is going to tire out, it's going to fatigue, so I recruit the next group. And then when that fatigues, I recruit the next group. And then when that fatigues, I recruit the next group. And hopefully by the time that fatigues, this group is rested. But if I kept doing it, you would see it start shaking. And I'm assuming that everybody's kind of experienced that at one point or the other, where your muscle gets kind of tired and it starts shaking. Now, this is a picture of it. Again, this is showing a muscle area, and it has two motor units. They're different colored for reasons so you can see it. I mean, in your body, they're not blue and red color-coded. But you got motor unit 1, and it's going to stimulate the blue fibers. Motor unit 2 stimulates the red fibers. And so if I just am doing something light, I might just use motor unit 1 and be done with it. But if I continue to do it and keep exercising and those tire out, then I recruit motor unit 2. Right? And again, I don't want to beat that horse to death, but I think that makes sense, I hope. Now, in things like sustained contractions, we're going to have smaller motor units that will be recruited first, and then the larger ones get recruited later, because we're going to try to save those to when we really need them. So summation and recruitment, all right, remember summation is what we looked at in the previous video, where if I stimulate a muscle to contract, but I don't let it get back down, I don't let it relax all the way back down to where it was before, and stimulate it again, I'm going to have a stronger contraction. And then again, if I don't let it relax all the way down and I stimulate it, I can get a stronger contraction. This is increasing the strength of the pull of the myosin heads on actin. And so summation plus recruitment can produce a sustained contraction of increasing strength. Whole muscle contractions are smooth movements, and that is because it all is working together. Now, this is one thing that is again, going back to that, you don't know it until you kind of see it not working right. But you have a continuous state of partial contraction in all muscles. When the muscles are at rest, there's a partial contraction of it. Now, there is a disease called Bell's palsy. We'll look at this a little bit when we get into the cranial nerves. But if you know anything about Bell's palsy, this is a disease of a cranial nerve that you'll have the patient have half of their face paralyzed. Now, you don't think about having a underlying muscle contraction in your face until it is paralyzed and you see what it's like when there's not a true contraction and it sags. So muscle tone is one of those things that you don't notice until it's gone, kind of like the recruitment, until you have no longer have fresh motor units to recruit. Now, there are two types of contractions as far as this goes, and they're simply based on movement. Isotonic contractions are contractions where there is movement of the bones on either side. Isometric is contraction where there's no movement. Now, I will tell you before we get into the fine-tuning parts of this, the way that I remember this is, I've grown up in America. I have lived here my whole life, and we Americans can be very stubborn. When I was in grade school, they tried, and this was in the 70s, they tried to switch over from the English pounds and inches and feet and whatever to the metric system of meters and grams and kilometers, and so the metric system was tried, but it did not move. Us Americans, like I said, can be very stubborn, so we kind of had it to where we wanted our more complex rule of measurements instead of getting to the easy tens. So as a joke, I just say that the metric system came to America and it had no movement. That's how I remembered that isometric meant that it was a contraction where there's no moving. So if I went and I pushed a big cinder block wall and I put all my strength behind it and I really tighten my muscles, they're not going to move. All right. And now isotonic, and again, I will tell you the way that I remember this is, if I was to want to have a nice vodka tonic in the middle of the summer or whatever, and I don't encourage drinking, but I'm just saying this is kind of the way I remembered it. In order to get the tonic to my mouth, it had to move. So the isotonic was the movable contraction, and that's how I remember it. Isometric, there was no movement. Isotonic, tonic, there is movement. So in isotonic, there is actually two different types of contraction, concentric and eccentric. Concentric is the one that we would think of. This is the commonly thought one. This is when there is shortening. The contraction is shortening. But now this is one that people don't think of very often, but it is very important. Eccentric. Eccentric isotonic contraction is when I have contraction of the muscle, but it is lengthening. Now this is going to be, for instance, you'd say, well, when would that happen? Let me ask you, if you're going to take a little baby and you're going to put it down in a crib, you're not just going to drop it. slowly do that. What you're doing is, while you're extending your elbows, your bicep brachii, your main flexor muscle, is going to have contraction to make sure that there is stability in how you do it. So that is one way to remember it, but a lot of people have a hard time thinking about this eccentric. Now this is kind of showing the different movements. This is, since we're pulling it up, this is isotonic concentric. This, when we're moving it down, but we still have force in this bicep. This is eccentric, isotonic. And in this, I'm pulling on some fixed bar, and my bicep brachii is very contracted, but there's no movement. This is isometric. Now, this last part, we're going to look at a couple of types of muscle fibers. Now, when we look at this, I want to make sure we go back to, if you understand the base idea of basically glycolysis, this will help you understand these types of muscle fibers. There are three types. These are the three types. Now, the ones I'm going to really concentrate are the polar opposites. So slow twitch and fast twitch. Now, there is a middle fiber that is the majority of what humans are made of. It's called fast twitch, fatigue resistant fibers. Now, the ones that I am going to concentrate on are these two. All right. I'm just going to kind of make it to where these are the two that I'm looking for. I want to erase this and kind of get this. I'm just going to cross this out right now. Now, think of track and field. There are two distinct different types of runners. You have sprinters and you have marathon runners. Sprinters need short, what we call burst energy, that we're just going to take off, but we're not going to be able to sustain it real long. Then we have marathon runners that are going to run for great distances for long periods of time. So I need lots of energy. They don't fatigue real easy. The slow twitch are the marathon runners. The fast twitch are the sprinters. Fast twitch needs instant energy, but not looking at it for prolonged periods of time. Slow twitch, the marathon runners, are looking for long-term energy. So if you remember, we have glycolysis that has three steps, and it goes in two phases. Anaerobic, I'm just going to put in and I'm going to put oxygen here and say nope. And then the other two phases are in aerobic, AR, and I'm going to put the oxygen here. So I need oxygen with one, I don't with the other. This is the first step, and it only produces 2 ATP. This is the second phase, the other 3 steps, and it's going to produce another 30 ATP. So this is prolonged energy. This is the one that the slow twitch fibers want to deal with. This is instant energy. This is the one that the fast twitch want to deal with. So if I'm looking at using oxygen, there are a couple things that I need to have. One is I need to have a lot of mitochondria, because if I'm using oxygen to try and get into the aerobics phase happens in mitochondria. So if I have a ton of oxygen but no mitochondria, that doesn't work out well. I also need a good blood supply, because I need to be bringing in a lot of glucose. I need to be bringing in that food for it. These are going to have a red color, so they're called red fibers. They have a lot of myoglobin. Again, myoglobin is what holds oxygen. So I've got everything needed to bring a lot of oxygen, a blood supply with glucose and the myoglobin holding onto it, and mitochondria, because this produces a lot of energy. It's not real. It doesn't have to be real quick. It produces a bunch of energy. So we call those slow twitch fibers. They are the marathon runners. Now the fast twitch, they are called glycolytic fibers because all they're worried about is glycolysis. they have less myoglobin, so they are going to be white. They're going to have a white look to them. They have poor blood supply compared to the slow twitch because we're not needing blood. We're not needing oxygen as much because we're not worried about getting into the oxygen in the mitochondria. And it's going to have fewer mitochondria because, again, I'm not worried about it. I'm worried about glycolysis, that first little break of glucose, and that even though it's a short amount of a small amount of energy, it is only needed for a short period of time, and it does the job. And so fast twitch is the sprinter of the group because it just needs fast, instant energy. Now, I hope that that makes sense. Again, it goes back to just understanding. If you can understand slow twitch fibers are for the long haul, fast twitch fibers are for instant energy and instant power, but not for long. Glycolysis is the first thing. I don't need to worry about mitochondria, and since I don't have mitochondria, I don't need to worry about oxygen, so that means I don't have to have a really good blood supply. Whereas the slow twitch fibers that are interested in long-term energy need all of those things. And then the middle fiber, again, this is going to basically be the middle ground. But these two different fibers here, the ones that I'm concentrating on, this is the difference between dark meat in chicken and white meat. So chickens do not fly. Chickens, they run like crazy, but they don't fly. So when they don't fly, their white meat, their breast meat, because they're not flying, they don't have to have a lot of myoglobin or anything. So they have white meat in their pectoralis major, their breast meat. It is white meat. It is dark meat in the thighs and legs, because if you've ever seen a chicken, they run like crazy. But this is also why in something like a dove or a bird that flies, that the breast meat is also dark meat, because it is going to need extra energy. So anyway, I know it's the spring semester I'm recording this, but this is always good around Thanksgiving time to go over with, because if you can stomach it, if you're at a big family meal and you want to eat more turkey, you talk about that. That usually causes at least a few people to lose their appetite, so you get more food. So anyway, I hope you're all doing well. I hope that these videos are helping. I hope you're able to follow it. And we will see you in the next video. Take care.